Good morning. Very good morning to you. Happy New Week. My name is George Essien, Nigeria's leading peak performance consultant. I'm also a life coach and motivational speaker. And I'm here to teach you this Monday morning about something very important. We will be discussing, and we'll probably go on a series with it, on the subject of persuasion. I am very passionate about the subject of persuasion because for the last 15 years I have taken my time to study persuasion. I see persuasion in everything. I see persuasion in parenting. If you are a father or a mother and you have teenagers, getting them to do what you want them to do will take a lot of persuasion. So let's learn about persuasion. You see persuasion in parenting. You see persuasion in romance, wooing that lady and getting her to follow you, get married to you, be your girlfriend. We see persuasion in leadership, leading people. We see persuasion in team building. We see persuasion in politics. We see persuasion in sales and marketing. We see persuasion in negotiation. We see persuasion in finance, in economics, social economics, behavioral change. We see persuasion in many areas. You see, persuasion covers a broad spectrum, and not knowing or understanding persuasion will limit you. Just by improving your persuasive ability or your communications ability, you would improve your income by 50%. Whatever it is you're doing, you will become so relevant to society just because you improve your persuasion. Now, the beautiful thing about this whole mix is that in this game of life, you're either here or there. You are either the influenced or the influencer. You are either the persuaded or the persuader. You are either the one who is buying stuff from people or the one who is selling stuff from people. You are either the needy or the needed. You cannot be in the middle ground. And if I were you, I'll choose to be the influencer. I'll choose to be the persuaded. I'll choose to be the one who is selling, who is influencing. And so today and in coming days, we'll be learning how to persuade. What is it that the fundraiser knows and says that gets people to bring out money from their pockets to invest or to sow seeds? What is it that the politician knows and says that gets people to follow him, follow his line of thought? What is it that the leader knows? Okay, what is it that the fraudster does or knows that gets you to fall into his trap? I know of folks who will sit down in a keke. It's very popular in my city, where you are in a vehicle and then somebody comes into the vehicle and engages in some conversation with you, and that conversation will lead to you going back home to bring out money from wherever you kept money, or going to your ATM to withdraw money, or going to your bank to withdraw money and give to people. And then later, after the whole scheme is done, these people, they scammed. The person who is gullible, the person who was swindled, will say, I was jazzed, it was a charm. It wasn't the charm. There were certain things you can understand about persuasion that will now make you quickly spot a manipulative persuader, quickly spot a con artist, quickly spot a fraudster. All right, what is it that Delilah, the Bible, knew that made her eventually swindle Samson, get Samson to reveal the secrets? Samson was it the sex? I don't think it was the sex. Was she the most beautiful girl in the whole of the city? I don't think it was that. I think that, Samson had other prostitutes. He was a very powerful and influential person, so he could have related to other prostitutes. But there was something about Delilah. There was something that Delilah knew, and that's what we're going to learn today. There was something that she knew that got Samson to fall. So we're going to be understanding how to identify people's emotional agendas today. We're also going to be learning how to identify people's what we call mumu button. And that's the truth. Why should you know it? You should know it so that you can defend yourself. You should know it so that you can choose how you're persuaded, when you're persuaded, who persuades you. Because the truth of the matter is that at some point you'll be persuaded, but you should have that choice. And whether they are coming at a conscious level or at unconscious level, I want to bring to you awareness, something that will help you become better. Now let's get into public speaking, because of course the purpose of this group is to understand public speaking. Public speaking is not public speaking if there's no persuasion. There is no bite if there's no persuasion. What makes public speaking effective, bring out the deliverables, is the fact that persuasion is. So I'm going to show you how to persuade anyone at any time. If you're into sales, this is a video you should watch. Get your writing pad and take down notes, because you will now know how to get and convince people to sign up, to register, to do your business. If you're a leader and you're having problems with people, this is a video you should need to watch. If you're a parent and you're having issues with difficult children, what do you need to know about the psychology of people, the psychology of children that will help you? And then you get to understand it. So first of all, I'm going to teach a very basic, very, very basic principle. A very basic principle. And let me tell you the definition in case you're writing down. Persuasion is getting people to do what you want. Shikena. When you tell somebody to do something, or you want somebody to do something and the person does it, you're a persuaded person. So write that down. Secondly, persuasion is in degrees. What that means that it is in levels. It doesn't happen instantaneously. Before a person does what you want, the person should be doing small, I'm going to discuss that later, small things in line with what you want. So persuasion is in degrees. And those small activities that the person does is okay. Now, there are three kinds of persuasion. The first one is called coercive persuasion, where you use force, threats, punishment to get people to do what you want. That is called forceful or coercive persuasion. I mean, the military regime, we had that going for us, and most parents want to use that. I mean, parents of those days used to, when the father comes back home to the house, everybody's running away, hiding under, ducking here and there, because the man was used to punishing, to beating, and he got them to be influenced in that way. And that works for a while. But most of the parents who had those kind of strict children who had those kind of strict parents eventually had issues growing up. Okay. Now we have the next one called manipulative persuaders, or manipulative persuasion, where the idea is to scheme, to scam, where the idea is for your own personal aggrandizement. That's why you have the fraudsters, the sale allegations about, these 419 guys, or the Yahoo boys, as we say, the guys who would also do it in front of you. That's where they fall in. And there are even pastors who are great manipulators, who know how to use the gospel. And by the way, religion is a very, very powerful manipulative tool. Religion is a very, very powerful one. In fact, it's the strongest and greatest manipulative tool in all of the universe. So if you hide under the cloaks, hide under the cloak, or hide under the dress of religion, there's so much you can do. We've heard of stories of people. I know of a certain pastor by the name Jim Jones. You can check it out. Jim Jones of 1975. He was able to manipulate over 700 individuals in church to drink cyanide as Holy Communion and to die and go to his paradise. What did he say to them? Did he judge them? No. There were a few things. First of all, he used one of the greatest tools, and that's religion. And so you see a lot of things happen in church. There was a certain pastor by the name Reverend King. Reverend King got people. He used to beat people. He used to do all kinds of stuff in his church. Eventually was arrested because one person that he manipulated and beat died. And right now he's been sentenced to death by hanging. I'm sure you've heard the story. It was 2006 or so. He's still awaiting his death sentence. But here's the point. So religion can be used as a strong manipulative tool, and you've got to be very careful. There are women who are natural seductresses. Seduction is a form of persuasion. And let me write this down if you want to write it down. Every human contact has an element of seduction. Every human interface, every human contact, when you meet people, whether it's a man or woman, has a form of seduction. And by that I mean magnetic attraction, not in a negative sense. But when it is used for your own good, for your own personal aggrandizement, then that is when it is called manipulative persuasion. Now the third kind of persuasion is called the motivational persuasion. Of course, like the name implies, it's meant to lead people into something positive, lead people into something very, very positive. And that's what we are going to be advocating. I'd like you to lift up your hands and say, I make a commitment. I'm waiting for you to say it now. I make a commitment not to use this knowledge for evil. Yes, that's true, because what I'm going to be sharing with you, you can use it for evil. You can get anything you want in the world. You can marry the most beautiful lady in the world. Yes, that's so. 3,000 years ago, a certain man by the name Socrates, you know Socrates? Socrates is referred to as the wisest, not the most persuasive individual that's ever lived. The interesting thing about Socrates was that, I mean, all of the ideas we have today are because of some of the ideas that Socrates and his fellow philosophers came up with. Most of you know that ancient Greek ruled the world. Before the Romans came into the scene, Greek ruled the world. And we call today Western civilization thrives on democracy and a few other governing principles. Those principles were put together by the ancient Greek philosophers like Socrates and Plato and a few others, made 3,000 years ago. That's 1,000 years before Christ was in the scene. And Socrates was referred to as a sage, a very wise philosopher. Now, the beautiful thing about Socrates was that he was also very ugly. But he got anything he wanted in life because he understood that the man who can speak, the man who can persuade, can get what he wants in life. And that's why learning how to speak in public is so vital. Now, this is what Socrates did. Socrates was able to convince the most beautiful girl in all of ancient Greek. Imagine somebody winning Miss Universe, and a very ugly fellow was able to convince her that he is the husband. He's the husband, and she eventually got married to him. She got married to Xantippe. That's a feat never done by an ugly person. Got married to the most beautiful girl in the world in ancient Greece then, and it was really amazing because he understood certain principles I'm going to be sharing with you today. So take it seriously. You can get what you want in life. And if you want to get anything in life, anything you want in life, there is no way you cannot avoid learning communication. If you want to get anything in this life, if you're going to be rich people are speakers. If you're going to really be rich, you must learn how to communicate, learn how to sell. So first of all, let's get into a certain concept about human beings. Now, pay attention to me. Every human being, this is where we'll begin, and I want to write it down because I teach this regularly, but it's important to write this down. Every person you meet has an emotional agenda. Write that down. Emotional agenda. What is emotional agenda? Every human being you meet in life has a move button. Every man, woman, child. Don't say you don't have it. You have it. Yes, you have it. There was something somebody will say to you, and you will bring out the rest of the money, all the money you have, and give. There's something somebody will say to you and you lose all sense of reasoning. There was a part of you that can be touched. There's an emotion that can be touched. There's a secret fantasy, an addiction that you have right now. And the reason, we all cover ourselves with religion. We cover ourselves with clothes, looking all packaged, but there's a mumu button you have. And if you want to be truthful with me, at some point in your life, you have fallen prey of some of these guys. Now, so understand that everybody has a gullible tendency. Everybody has an emotional agenda. Your job as a persuader, first and foremost, is to identify the emotional agenda of a person. Now, the emotional agenda of a person is what a person will do in spite of the risk. I'll tell you a story. Now, this philosopher many years ago was trying to move from the sea, through the sea, from a place to another location. Now, the challenge was that the captain of the ship warned him and said to him, "Sir, the boat, we don't have a big ship that can take us across the sea to your location. And the boat in question the boat available is a very small boat. So the chances are that the boat can capsize and then you will die. 2, because the sea is very dangerous and you need a big ship, you can have pirates attack you, and when pirates attack you, they can take you as a slave or as a prisoner. So my own suggestion to you is not to go by the sea to the other end." But guess what? That man still went on the journey. Why did he still go on that journey? Why did he take all that risks? Because his family, his wife, his children were at the other end. So his emotional agenda was to go and meet his children. Apparently, he had been away from his kids and his family for a long time. He needed to go and see his children. And so no risks, no challenge was good enough. So what is that emotional agenda you have, or that person has? The first thing you want to learn to do is quickly identify people's emotional agenda. I'm meeting with you one-on-one. I want to know your emotional agenda, because people's emotional agenda determines their emotional direction. What people want to do in spite of a risk determines their emotional direction. Does this make sense to you? So now the question going on in your mind right now is, George, okay, we heard you. How do we identify people's emotional agenda? That's what the scammer does. That's what the trickster, that's what the 419 does. That's what the salesperson does. How do you quickly, in a short moment, identify a person's emotional agenda? All right, so the scammer sees you and he knows that there are certain things that he suspects that being a man or being a woman, being a Nigerian or being an American, being in your 40s or being in your 50s, being a teenager or being a young person, there is something driving you. So what is a person's what is the emotional agenda driving a person? That's the first thing you want to identify. Now there are quick ways, there are 4 ways. 4 ways you can quickly identify people's emotional agenda. The first way, fastest way to identify a person's emotional agenda is to look at the person's eyes. Now this is so important. Train yourself to look at people's eyes. Look at the customer's eyes. Look at the team eyes, because all reality is in the eyes. The eye is the window to the soul. There is seduction in the eyes, there is love in the eyes, there is hatred in the eyes, there is strength in the eyes. When a person is lying, he most likely will avoid your eyes. He would avoid your eyes because the eyes tells you a whole lot. True smiles. That's why assassins wear dark glasses to hide their fear. That's why people who are feeling sorrowful and sad will wear dark glasses to hide their fear. Because you see, the eyes tells us a whole lot. Train yourself to look at people's eyes, because the eyes reveal people's emotional agenda. The eye reveals people's emotion. Train your children, if you have kids, train your children to look at people's eyes so that they don't fall prey to sexual predators. That uncle is trying to call them. Tell your children to look at the eyes. The uncle may be very nice, very smooth talking, but if you train that child to look at the uncle's eyes, you can quickly know that uncle is looking out for something more than what he's requesting for. So the eyes, you see, the eyes of a man is like the tail of a dog. Now, if you see a dog is always, if you go into a house and you notice the dog is barking heavily, strongly, and the tail of the dog is shaking, wagging, don't be afraid. That dog likes you, because the tail reveals his emotional direction. The dog likes you, or dog is happy you're there. If you're entering into the house and the dog is barking and the tail of the dog is in between the legs of the dog, don't worry, the dog is afraid of you. You can actually scare the dog and the dog goes away. But if you go into a house and the dog's ears are standing and the tail is standing straight, my dear brother and sister, you better take off, because the dog has sized you up and identified that, look, I can take this guy down, I can take this lady down, and it's coming for you. So that is why the police people will cut off the tail of the dog, because if you see the direction of the dog's tail, you can know whether it is afraid or it is happy or it is conscious. So they take out the tail of the dog. The same way the tail of a dog is the same way the eyes of a man is. So that's why the CIA and the FBI, every time they want to identify and know whether you are telling the truth or whether you are lying, they will use an eye detective machine to check you out. The eye is so important. There is a body of knowledge called neuro-linguistic programming where we go deeper into the eye scanning techniques. We can look at a person's eyes and know his strategy. We can look at a person's eyes and know his direction. So train yourself to look at customers' eyes. Now, in public speaking, one of the things you want to quickly do is to look at people's eyes. Don't say, they tell you look at the heads of people. No, that's a myth, and that is improper. Look at your audience's eyes, because through your eyes you can identify whether they are following you. Because through the eyes of people you can communicate value, you can communicate confidence. You must learn to look at people's eyes, and this is very important. So one way to identify people's emotional agenda is to look at the person's eyes all the time. Start becoming very eye conscious all the time. Number 2, the second thing to do in order to identify a person's mood button is to look at the person's body language. Now, most of you don't know this. Your body has a language. Write that down. Your body has a language. As a matter of fact, your eye doesn't lie and your body doesn't lie. When you are irritated, it doesn't matter how you try to hide it. A very sensitive person, a very, very sensitive person can look at you and still know that you're irritated, because the body has a language. There are no emotions. Have you ever seen emotions before? Our emotions are body language, because our emotions is actually buried in our body language. When you're happy, if you check very well, there's a spot in your body where there is happiness. Happiness can be in your chest, it can be in your head, it can be in your face. Happiness has a location in your body. Sadness also has a location in your body. It can be at your back. When you go to a man, you're trying to sell something to him, and like I'm sitting down here, he begins to reverse, recline the way I'm reclining as you are discussing, having a conversation with him. That tells you something. This guy is trying to evaluate me. He's speculating. He's not sure. All right? And then, but if you are speaking to a person and the person leans forward this way, like I'm leaning forward, that tells you something. This person is interested in what I'm saying. If you are speaking to somebody and the person is tapping his table as you are speaking, it means this guy wants you to hurry up. A person is pacing back and forth. That person is worried. Just by looking at a person's physiology, I can tell whether I am connected with the person or not. And there's a body of knowledge on body language. It's called kinetic. There's a body of knowledge that studies the movement of bodies and helps you read people from there. And for example, I can look at a person and know the person is going into trance. There's something we call trance in psychology and in persuasion. Trance. People go into trance at various moments of life. Like if a speaker is speaking, one of the things the speaker does is that he finds a way to get people into trance. Now that is beyond the scope of this lesson. You have to pay heavily to understand how to put people into trance. The truth is that even you, as you're speaking today, as you're listening to me, you go into trance, into 2 seconds trance, 10 seconds trance, 30 minutes trance, 1 hour trance. It can be that intense. And when you are under trance, you are very vulnerable. That is what the fraudster knows. That is what the fundraiser knows. That is what the salesperson knows. He knows what to say. There is a language pattern. There are words you can use. Words you can use. They may be very simple words, but they can trigger not just emotions, but trigger trance, so that people are not thinking consciously. And once you can assess their subconscious, you can control them. Now let's not go into that. The point I'm trying to make is that through the body, I can know when the person is going to trance. I can look at the person's breathing pattern and know when the person is going to trance. I can look at the movement in the line here and know when the person is going to trance. And I can make my actions done at that point. So the body reveals a whole lot. The body, the physiology of a person determines the psychology of a person. As a matter of fact, there was a nexus. There's a strong relationship between the body and the mind. In persuasion and NLP, we say there's no mind, there's no body, all are one. So I can look at the person's body and I'll show you what to do, and you quickly know the person's body. The next thing you want to also do is to listen to a person's words. Now, great persuaders don't just initiate speaking. What they control most of the time is that they control the asking. Learn to ask questions, and by asking questions, people begin to speak. In the conversation you have, the move button of a person is in the conversation you have with the person. There is tonality. In the tonality, in the words, in the phraseology, in the things the person says, I can pick an anchor from there and use it against him. When a man speaks, he licks. When a man speaks, he licks. He unveils his sentiments, his prejudice, his enthusiasm, his faith or lack of it, his knowledge or ignorance. He unveils himself. When a man speaks, he licks. So your job is not to speak first, but to get people to speak and to speak. And the way to do that is to ask questions, especially open-ended questions. Open-ended questions get people to speak and reveal themselves, and eventually you can know their anchor buttons, their hot button, their mumu button, and from there you can persuade them. And that's one thing that salespeople need to learn. Don't dominate the talking, because you don't really know what the customer needs. You really need to pay attention to what they're saying so you can know what they say. Now, the fourth way to identify people's emotional agenda, and it's important, is to observe patterns. We call it pattern recognition. pattern recognition. And there was a pattern in language, there is a pattern in physics. Something the person repeatedly does, sometimes unconsciously, is a pattern. Observe patterns. And students of power, students of influence are students of pattern. What's that thing that person repeatedly does? When you recognize patterns, you can influence people. So you want to look at the person's eyes, you want to look at the person's body language, you want to listen to the person's words, and you want to observe for patterns. That's how to influence people. Now, I'm going to be teaching, because it's a strong body of knowledge, I'm going to be teaching 6 principles of persuasion. 6 principles of persuasion. This philosophy was put together by Robert Cialdini. Robert Cialdini. Now, that's where we're going to stop today. But basically, I'm going to share 6 ways to persuade anybody. And if you want to learn more, then you need to subscribe to our training, and then we'll show you a little more in that class. But let me quickly show you 6 ways to right now, go out there to the marketplace, go to your family, or go to your home and persuade people. The first way, according to Robert Cialdini, is reciprocity. I'll spell it for you. R-E-C-I-P-R-O-C-I-T-Y. Reciprocity. And what does it mean? It means to give before you expect. To give before you expect. When you give a person anything, a person is more likely to respond, to reciprocate what you have given. So that's a very powerful way to persuade people. Give attention, give love, and most people who are into sales will give something, give a bait, give something, a little. Now, there was a research done many years ago in America. One of the things that's very common in America is tipping. Tip. When you go to a restaurant and you make them take a meal, you can give a tip to the waiter. That's something very common. Now, what it did was that they did an experiment. The experiment was quite interesting. Here's what happened. The waiter gave, after they finished taking the meal, the waiter gave the person who was eating a sweet, thanking the person for eating there. And that person who took the sweet was so excited that he gave the waiter a $10 tip. Now, another waiter came to another person and gave 2 sweets, not 1, 2 sweets. And just by giving 2 sweets to the person after, he got $15. So they realized that by giving somebody something, no matter how little it is, by giving somebody something, no matter how little it is, increase the tips they got. So whenever you want to collect something from anybody, make sure that you give something. Make sure that you give bonuses. Make sure you give an offer. That's how to persuade people to get into your line of things. So the principle of reciprocity is very high. So we've got people who say yes, people that say yes to you will, when they receive something, are more likely to say yes. You go for that person's birthday party because the person came for your birthday party. You go for that burial because the person came for your own burial ceremony of maybe your dad or your relative or someone. You do that. The next very powerful way to influence people, oral or written, is scarcity. Scarcity. What's scarcity? Making things scarce. Now, for example, you say that I do that a lot in my sales. I say, look, we have limited product, we have only 10 place spots for anybody who's interested in this thing. After 10, the price will go up to this. Or after 10 people, we have those 10 products. You need to get it now. By tomorrow, it will not be available anymore. And you will notice that because we have only 10 units of that product, people begin to rush it. All right. So by making something scarce, making a brand scarce, or making it exclusive, I could also say exclusivity. This project is for just this XYZ set of people. Because you make it exclusive, people are most likely going to respond and be persuaded by scarcity. Scarcity is very powerful. The third way, and I want you to pay attention to this, to get people to be persuaded, is authority. Now, I teach that in public speaking, and I say that one of the fastest ways to get people to sign up for anything or to get people to do what you want them to do is to establish yourself as an authority. To show people and something that authorizes you. For example, if you come to my training program, I'll show you my certifications. If I want to do anything with my foundation, I'll show you that I'm registered with the federal government, with CAC. I'll show you my certifications. I will make reference to people and people who endorse me. Just by establishing your credibility, you will facilitate the persuasion process. So that's one of the things you want to learn to do. If you're speaking in public and you're speaking to a crowd that do not know you, the first thing you want to do is establish your credibility. I see Dr. Kemini Basi here. Now, if Dr. Kemini is coming to a meeting, the first thing you want to tell us the number of years of experience you have as a medical doctor, before you talk to the patient, and you'll be shocked how that they will respond to you much more. So, authority is a very powerful way to persuade people. Let's go to another way people get persuaded and how you can persuade people. The next thing is consistency. By being consistent in a thing, people are observing you and they are more likely going to respond to you because you're consistent. Do you get that? Because you are consistent, people follow. People follow consistency. People are persuaded by consistency. It means that they assume that there's something about this thing that makes you continue to do it. That's one. Number two, people will continue to do what they are doing. So what you want to do is to get a little commitment from them. So if you want to get a yes, get small yeses. Eventually you get the ultimate yes. So consistency is another way to get people to influence you. The last two that Robert Cialdini shares in his book, Influence, The Power of Influence, is liking, to like. What does it mean by that? It means that people buy from people they know and they like. People buy, respond, are persuaded by people who they know and they like. Your job is to get people to like you. Now, there is a way to get people to like you. There's actually 6 ways to get people to like you, whether they want to or not. And that is not within the scope. I'm not going to teach it here today. I'll find time and teach it in the WhatsApp group. For those of you who are part of our training, the WhatsApp group, fantastic. I'll teach you extensively how to be able to like you. It's important that you get people to like you because people buy from people they like, they know, and they trust. And that's something that you see happening, especially when you're a salesperson. So liking is important. And then the final thing that Robert Cialdini says is a principle of persuasion. He calls it consensus or social proof. It's something called the herd mentality. People do things because others are doing it. People do things because others are doing it. So a research was done, and guess what the research was? They put a product, on display, and just put that buy the products here. All right, people got the response was not very much. Then they did another experiment again. They put 75% of our customers always pick these products because it is exclusive and nice. Just by writing that 75% of their customers use that product, the sales went up 2-3 times. Just by indicating the fact that 75% of their customers go for this product instead of that product. Does it make sense to you? So people do what others are doing. And by understanding these 6 principles that Dr. Robert Cialdini put together, it will help you to become a lot more persuasive. Now, persuasion is a lot more than what I've just shared with you. There's such deep knowledge that you need to know. And I've been studying it for 15 years, and I still study. And every time I study and I read works and read research papers by different experts, I get thinking about how to help people. The important thing is you need to master persuasion for your business, for your life, and for all that you want. Now, I'm going to conclude my thoughts today by encouraging you to sign up for our public speaking training. Like I said earlier, that public speaking is not public speaking if there is no persuasion. Public speaking is not just about diction and grammar. Public speaking is about getting outcomes. It's about getting results in your life. And if you join my training, nobody will teach you persuasion and public speaking as practically and as usable as I will teach you. And I dare you to take me on that. Join our training. Be part of it. in the WhatsApp group, in the Zoom classes we're going to be having, and you will see that insight upon insight you get. Beyond that, you'll be given assignments that will enable you to practicalize all of the things you've learned today. I hope you got value. I hope you learned stuff. For those of you who are subscribed in our group and who are watching right now, join me this evening in class on WhatsApp, where we'll continue this conversation about persuasion. We'll be looking at how to get instant rapport with anybody and a few other tips on persuasion. Do have a great week ahead. God bless.